welcome our panelists, Sam Segan and Eden Ohayon. They're going to speak with you. They're going to introduce themselves to really work on this project of how do we tell our stories with our resumes. One other logistical thing, which I forgot, there is going to be a Q&A and a chat. You can put your questions in either. We will respond to them. We might type an answer. We might bring it up at the end when we do our chunk of time for questions. We also, if we do not answer, we promise we will answer you after the webinar. So they will be answered. Do not worry. Sam, Eden, thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for all your work putting this together. I'm so excited to see it a second time and to get to ask you some questions at the end. So let's get in there. Please introduce yourselves, say a couple words about your background, what you're working on with your students, and yeah, let's get this started.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Segan. As we introduce ourselves, of course, we are not going to give you our complete resumes, but I've worked as a tutor and as a college admissions advisor for 10 years, 5 of those with Bespoke. I've also worked in the admissions office at Williams College, so I have a little bit of experience on that end. I think not enough students recognize that you can submit a resume as part of your application and that there is a spot for it on the Common App, as well as on the applications of many other schools. It's not a requirement, but I think many of us in this highly competitive age and in the highly competitive bracket that we New Yorkers inhabit should really be taking advantage of every opportunity when it comes to bolstering our college application. So I have a number of current resume students. Some of them are organically arising as part of the college application process. You know, we work on their essay polishing, we work on other elements of their application, and we also work on the resume. I also have some students that I've worked on resumes with for several years. That may be actually the only sort of remaining thing that we have to work on. You know, I have a student that I've seen for, I think, 7 years, starting from really the beginning of high school all the way through college. And I've seen his resume evolve through summer internships, college application, and now job applications in the real world.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eden. I grew up in California and I attended Yale, and there I majored in English with a writing concentration. So I love working on essays and theater studies. I've spent a similar length of time working in education, and in that time I've developed this really special interest in college applications, college admissions essays, and professionalism for students. So everything from emails to cover letters to resumes. I've had a couple of students as well who didn't know that there was a place for the resume on the Common App, and because they were submitting their application fairly close to the deadline, they decided not to bother with it. And I thought that was a missed opportunity. Do I think it was a make or break for their applications? Not necessarily, but I want my students to take advantage of every possible asset to their application. And at Bespoke, Sam and I have both had the opportunity to work with students from the time they began their SAT or ACT prep, or even before that, to the time when they began their careers as young professionals. And we've had a chance to support them. As Sam said, their resumes have evolved because your resume will evolve with time. So wonderful. Let's get this presentation started.
And here we are. So I wanted to say also, just as we're beginning, from an admissions point of view, one of the big benefits, you know, if we're talking about the college application resume, one of the big benefits of including a resume is it kind of frees you up in, for example, your essay, not to give us that monotonous list of credentials, not to feel like you have to include every activity ever in your very few activity slots. Your application is going to be viewed as a whole, and the resume is a valuable part of that. Similarly, kind of adjacently related, is I have a lot of students applying for professional posts, internships, and jobs, and many of them appreciate that the resume can play a role that integrates with their cover letter, right? They may not realize at first. I had one student who didn't really realize at first that the cover letter was a separate document from the resume. It really has a completely separate job to do. It's telling the story that you can also see sort of backgrounded by the resume. So the cover letter then doesn't have to do all of that legwork. It has less work to do. The resume is holding it up.
Absolutely. And something that's wonderful about the resume is that it provides college admissions offices and potential employers references. So institutions, names of specific people you've worked with, et cetera. And it allows students to foreground organizations that they've been connected with. The Common App list is, as Sam pointed to, is sort of loose and unstructured and only allows for several activities. So a resume is a really wonderful piece of your overall application puzzle.
Yeah, so with a lot of our students too, we're not only preparing them for the college application, right? We really want to be thinking about this document. Eden is going to say this a lot, that it's going to continue evolving. It's a great idea. Actually, we have a 9th grader or a 9th grade parent here. Why not start at that point with your resume?
Absolutely. And I've also worked with students, many students, on their correspondence with colleges, on writing professional emails. For many students, it was their first point of contact with schools they were interested in attending. Some were setting up tours, others were reaching out to professors or department chairs to, see if they could sit in on a specific class while they were visiting. And they wanted to present themselves in the best possible light. And after working together over a period of weeks to months, depending on the student, they had developed this skill of professional correspondence really thoroughly and strongly. And, they finally had an ease with that kind of exchange. And I was very glad when they didn't need me anymore.
That is kind of the bittersweet, but also the best part of tutoring, is like, go fly. So what is this seminar going to be? Well, very simply, we're going to make a resume. In the next hour, we will walk you through the process, start to finish. You'll see what it looks like for a student. I'm going to be playing the role of the confused student at points, and I will hope that my acting abilities, well, probably not up to Eden's, are adequate to the task. And so you'll see this fictional putative student go from completely confused, here are some activities, I guess, but how do I list them, to a neat resume. And you'll see how these conversations in our tutoring sort of just naturally evolve.
So the first thing I tell my students when we sit down to work on their resumes is to relax, because guess what? You've actually done the hard part. The hard part is everything you've done up until the point of writing this resume. And the easy part is packaging it in a way that is helpful to you. So this question comes up sometimes. You might have heard the term CV. So what is a resume, Sam, versus a CV?
Well, Eden, I'm glad you asked. A CV is extremely comprehensive. It's your body of work. It usually is presented in the context of graduate school. So it might be all of your academic publication, all of your academic credentials, everything. There's no page limit to a CV. It's just this sprawling document that encompasses the entirety of everything you've accomplished. You may be guessing that colleges don't have time to read that sort of thing, and you would be correct. So for the purposes of colleges and for the purposes of specific jobs, you want a resume, and a resume is concise. You pick and choose what fits the moment when you're using it.
Yes, and it fits on one page, so that's very important. And we'll talk about how to accomplish that goal. So something I've run into is that many students in 10th or 11th grade, which, I saw many of us in this room are in 10th and 11th grade, tend to feel like you don't have enough stuff for a resume. And I think a lot of students do tend to downplay the wonderful experience that they do have.
Yeah, I find this funny tendency that a lot of students have is to either think that they have to compare themselves to like a junior in college who's had 4 serious internships, which you don't have to do. I mean, people reading your resume, they can place you in the context of the age that you are and where you are in your life. And I also hear a lot of students, especially lately, and I don't know why this is, I could make cultural conjectures, but express a fear of bragging or being perceived as bragging. But you are not bragging simply by listing the things that you've done.
Exactly. And as we said before, your resume is an ever evolving document. It will always reflect the experience you gain. So it'll inevitably change over time. And, you know, importantly, it's a way to sell yourself. So don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, you have to shift your thinking a bit. You want to give yourself due credit for what you've accomplished. And you can see the slight shift in the way that these student quotes have moved around.
So when you're asking yourself, what can I reasonably put on my resume? A great litmus test is to ask yourself, would I feel comfortable speaking about or elaborating on this experience in an interview? So if you can speak enthusiastically about something you've done, it's fair game, put it in your resume.
Yeah, your resume, we're going to touch on this a lot. Your resume is telling a story, and you should be able to support that. So if it's your college application, the story it's telling is backgrounded by the other elements of your application, everything from transcript to essays, activities, everything. Rest assured, the people who read your college essay will also see your resume. They will also see those other materials.
Yes, it's one piece of that puzzle.
Okay, so let's say I'm the student. Where do I begin?
Okay, so start off by just putting the basics on the page. You want to put where you live, so your address, where you go to school, and you can also feel free to include any outside programs that you attend during the year in the education section.
So I'm a little worried about my GPA. This is New York. Things are really competitive. Should I include my GPA?
A good question. So a good rule of thumb, if you're in the top 25% of your class, put it in. But if not, you don't have to. You get to decide how to represent yourself. So no one's going to ask, why didn't the student put their GPA on their resume? Because they'll be too busy reading about all of your accomplishments and the skills you've gained. So, you know, only add what helps you. Okay. So the next step is to generate a long, shaggy list of all of the experiences you've had at school, just extracurricularly, professionally, everything. This is going to be a non-judgmental list of everything our imaginary student has done. And we may include it all, but we may not. At this stage, the important thing is just getting it down.
So like even things I did for 1 year, like I did Model UN just for 1 year, and then I really didn't have time for it anymore. I mean, it was fun, but it just was too many things. And I did a canned food drive with my school, but I mean, everybody did a canned food drive. It was just my school's thing. And I did write an article for the paper, but I was in 9th grade and it was just one time. And then I have this business where I take all of these video games I used to play, but I don't have time anymore because now I'm a junior and everything's crazy, and sell them online. Is that like, those are things?
Yes, absolutely. So everything counts. And you will hear us say that a lot. It's better to have a well-formatted, curated list that doesn't have everything. So we will make some necessary cuts so that you can direct the reader's eye to the things you do want them to see. But right now, yes, everything counts. Start by putting it all down.
What if I put down everything and it still just doesn't look like a lot? Like, I've heard you have to have a sports thing, but I only have one sport.
Well, that is one more sport than I've ever had, so I wouldn't worry. Yeah, I mean, some students may feel like they have not enough, and some might feel like they have too much. It's all about curation.
Okay, so a quick break from my student role, because I do feel like we should address, well, the elephant in the room.
I think it's important to say that this past year has been unlike any other in recent memory.
You almost surely have questions if you're like any other parents and students we've spoken to about how to deal with the unique experiences that came with a year under the confines of a global pandemic. And if you do have those, please, any specific questions, the Q&A box, the chat box, we will address those later.
Yep. And you know what we're going to say? We're going to say everything counts. So even babysitting for a sibling or helping out your grandparents, that counts.
Yeah, so I had a student do what I guess I can call spontaneous community service. So he had been doing a lot of cleanup projects with his synagogue, and they were unable to do in-person group gatherings during the early stages of the pandemic last summer. So he took to walking through Central Park, which was, I think, a meditative experience for him just to enjoy the surroundings. And he noticed that there was just a lot of garbage lying around. So he started picking up the garbage when he saw it in Central Park and throwing it away. And that was his activity.
I love that story. Sam mentioned this to me, you know, as we were creating this presentation, and I think that's wonderful. And of course that counts. Like, we weren't able to do the things we normally do, so we found ways to adapt. And I think that's a wonderful thing to put on your resume. And again, as Sam said, if you have questions about what might count for you, put it in the Q&A and we'll talk about it at the end.
Yes, thank you, Eden. Okay, so back in character, worried student, bespoke tutor, help me figure out what to do with this long, shaggy draft with all the things I did in the COVID year and before.
All right, so the next step is to start sorting your list into subheadings. So there are many common subheadings but for resumes, but not every resume has every subheading or has all of them. So you want to group your experiences in a way that highlights them best. So if you won 12 different poetry prizes in the Harvard Book Award, it probably makes sense for you to have an awards and honors section. That tells a story. Or if you're an avid volunteer, like Sam's student, maybe you have a volunteer work section. These sections tell stories in themselves.
So like, I don't have awards. I mean, not that many anyway. Is it okay not to have a section for those? In fact, I don't know if I even have enough for any sections. Is it okay to just have like work and activities?
So something that's great about the resume is that everyone is going to have an education section at the top and skills at the bottom, and we will get to skills in a minute. But some students may not have, you know, professional work experience at all, and that is completely okay. You might just have a list of activities, and that is completely suitable.
Wow. At first I thought I didn't have enough, but now I see it kind of piled up. I think I might have too much. Is it time to consolidate?
Exactly. You want to prioritize the things that you'd be most excited to talk about. But you also want to keep in mind that it never hurts to flaunt any big ticket items you might have. So, for example, let's say you had a summer internship at a well-known company or institution, but it wasn't your favorite experience. You should still include that, and be prepared to talk about the positive aspects of anything you list. Anything on your resume is fair game for an interview, as we said before. And if you're asked about that internship experience, rather than saying, oh, you know, I hated it, talk about the valuable skills that I'm sure you gained.
Yeah, so cutting out of role here, what we're talking about is creating, and we've been talking about story, narrative. We're talking about creating the narrative of you. So either my fictional student here, who is named after my favorite philosopher, or you, whoever you all are, 10th, 9th, 11th graders. After you sort your list, make note of any trends. The student that I was playing was interested in robotics, so that will become the story.
Yep. And the cool thing is you do not have to organize things chronologically in each subsection. So that means you should top load the things you want to prioritize for this student. We want to top load the robotics things in each section, because again, you're training the reader's eye to read things in the order you want them to. So you really do have a lot of power in how you're putting yourself forward, in the way that you want to be seen, just by virtue of how you order things in each subsection and how they're formatted.
And as we've mentioned before, judicious cuts will come into play. For the student that I was playing, who was not like the student I was tutoring who picked up the park, a single canned food drive may not be the most impressive element, and it may not warrant a place among the other things clamoring for attention as part of that student's story. For another student, though, every volunteering experience might form a meaningful whole. I had a real life student a few years ago who volunteered for 7 consecutive years at a center for neurodiverse kids, starting when she was quite young. And it wound up being a very meaningful part of her application because she was interested in pursuing child psychology in college.
So in our imaginary student's case, travel was also unspecific. So it's not going to make the cut, as we can see. But I had a student once, a real life student, who was really interested in archaeology, and travel was a significant point on her resume. She could speak very meaningfully and compellingly about her travels to Greece and what she learned at the National Archaeological Museum and at various historical sites that she went out of her way to visit on a family vacation. So remember, you want to be able to talk about it in an interview. So for Sextus Empiricus, our imaginary student, travel just wasn't meaningful enough to make that cut, and that's okay. Every student is different. Every resume is different.
Exactly. And by the way, we earlier mentioned this, and now we are circling back to it. We've added another section that we had not gone into depth with yet, which is the skills section that you can see here. Skills, not only experiences.
So Sam, what is a skill?
Well, Eden, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to say that again. So like the ability to smell fear, it's an ability you have that isn't only useful in a single setting. There are hard skills and soft skills, and we're going to tell you what those are, how to distinguish them.
So verbs like liaise or ran point to soft skills, whereas knowledge of a programming language is a hard skill. And those skills at the bottom of your resume are going to be hard skills. So to put it simply, hard skills are really specific and soft skills are more general. They're sometimes referred to as transferable skills.
Yeah, so while you're not going to identify these literally as this is a hard skill that I have on your resume, you can figure out where they go based on whether or not they're hard or soft. So soft skills will shine in your bullet points and descriptions of what you were asked to do at each of your jobs that you'll be listing. So if a job you're applying to requires a certain skill, you want to include that. You want to highlight those skills when you're applying for specific jobs with that job description.
Yeah, so let's say you were an intern at a law firm and there you regularly scheduled meetings and answered the phone, but this summer or in the future you want to apply for a job in entertainment instead of law, but the job has similar duties. So it's a different field, but the job requires the same soft skills. Those are the ones you want to emphasize in your resume. So now our student has generated a list and it's time to add these bullet points. And they should elaborate on those experiences and effectively convey the hard and or soft skills developed in each role.
Yeah, and so for now, we actually kind of took this a step further than the real initial draft of what might go in your bullet points. Like the initial description of the job is just going to be, as you'll see in a minute, kind of like a narrative of, oh, okay, well, here's what I did. And we're going to cut words later and refine the vocab later.
Yes. So as Sam said, first just describe in your own words, what did you do? And then when we're in this refining stage, the really important thing that you want to do is to choose very strong verbs.
Right. Okay. So let's say the student goes like, okay, so my uncle's my uncle's architecture firm, right? So I helped keep track of stuff for him, I guess. Like I'm trying to remember because it was last summer and a lot of stuff has happened. Or I guess the summer before last. Oh my goodness. but I had this Excel sheet. I tracked overtime hours. I helped him with PowerPoints when he wanted to make PowerPoints. I've been doing those for a long time, so I helped him with formatting. And then let me think. There's one other cool thing I did. So their website was old, and I realized that there was some script I could write that would just make it snazzier and run more smoothly. So that's what I did.
All right, well, that becomes in our, refinement, consolidated weekly presentations on building plans for delivery by VP. Those were the PowerPoints. And we don't have to say that the VP was your uncle, just have to say who it was at the firm. Also, improved code to streamline company website. Tracked overtime hours of 25 employees on Excel.
Right. So notice here that we have quantified that Excel sheet metric. We want to, as Eden said earlier, include numbers when they help you. So before, the GPA was sort of just under that top 25%, and we chose not to include it. But here, it's a meaningful thing to say that there were 25 employees you were keeping track of, and that this isn't just a small boutique firm with 2 or 3. Numbers here help you.
Absolutely. And if you're wondering where we got those wonderful strong verbs like consolidated and streamlined, you can actually use databases of action verbs like Yale's, which we've included here, to better explain your experiences and put them in the most positive and impressive terms. So this is a really invaluable resource when you're refining.
So I've had a number of students who knew that their experience would, quote unquote, look good on a resume, but it wasn't something they really enjoyed once they participated in it. I had one student very, very gung-ho about wanting to be a lawyer in civil rights cases, and they got to work in a law office. They were planning this law career, and when they got to the law office, they were like, "Wow, well, I guess I'm mostly collating documents here." And it wasn't exactly what they had hoped for or expected. It was a big firm. It was a, prestigious posting, but they were doing primarily sort of grunt work, paperwork, paralegal stuff. And then I had another student who got into the Brown pre-college program and had to attend remotely because of COVID, which clearly was not as much fun as it would have been if it were in person. So for these students, I encourage them to think of just one good thing that they learned, right? If all the pre-law student learned was how to function in an office, that's still valuable.
Absolutely. I sympathize with that. I worked in a law office, and don't tell anyone, was not my favorite job, but on my resume, I found some really, valuable skills that I learned there. And your resume, as we said before, it's a form of vetting. So, you've shown that you can function in an office or in a class at Brown or in a lab. That is really valuable in itself. Don't underestimate that. That signals to employees or potential employers that they don't have to worry about that aspect of hiring you. You've got the experience. And circling back to COVID, you really do learn a lot about your character when plan A fails and you have to turn to plan B. And if you did anything in that time that demonstrated passion or initiative, it speaks volumes that you did something in this time when the world sustained a great shock.
On a less emotionally grueling note, let's talk about what your resume will look like. So a great resource, as Eden kind of mentioned earlier with the vocab list of strong verbs, is a college office career website. Yale, Harvard, Williams. Those are designed for college students who are looking for jobs who are representing the college. So they are the most professional resources you can find.
Yep. And the templates we want to avoid are the ones that are colorful, that have graphics. And strangely enough, those are the ones suggested by Microsoft Word under resume templates. My students often think that they'll come to me with this, which of course, it's what's suggested in Word. And then I direct them elsewhere to the resources Sam was pointing to, and they think that the ones I point them to are boring. And I tell them, look, What's going to make your resume stand out is high attention to detail, a clean look, and organization. So this, Word resume feels sort of like a mean trap for people who don't know what resumes look like, because why would you until you're called upon to write one?
Yeah, I really I don't know who the intended audience of these Word templates is. I don't know why they exist. I don't know why Word does this. It's a mystery. But in any case, so if you are unsure about details like this, feel free to give Bespoke a call. I think Dan is going to remind us at the end. We are open to just free phone calls or a more extensive consultation if you'd like to have a tutor like me or Eden, and we can help you sort of create that less is more resume.
Yeah, and looking at this one, just to point out a few things, the header is really wasting a lot of space. And we talked about how space is kind of precious on your resume, so you don't want to waste it on a fancy header. There's really no need to put your objective on the left-hand side here. You'll take care of that in your cover letter. And I do not know what the icons at the bottom are for, but I do not think you need them.
I mean, it's appealing because we just, as humans, we're like crows. We just like bright, shiny objects. The problem here is that it's going to distract from the meat of what you want to say about yourself in a resume. It also leaves very little space for activity descriptions. It doesn't really make clear if you're supposed to keep like volunteer experience or leadership, or do you keep the or in there? Don't keep the or. Education, of course, should be first. So this isn't even aimed at students, I don't think. It's just not great. It's not great. I actually had one student for several years who kept still trying to sell me on these fancy templates because, well, I think what was happening was his fellow students were making their first resumes while we were on like draft 3, he and I, and he kept being like, oh, but they have a thing at the top and it's clickable and all of these things. And I kept having to talk him out of just these increasingly Byzantine resumes. And I think what we did compromise on was he really wanted the line across underneath the experience, like across the full page. And you know what? That's fine. That we could settle on.
Yeah, I completely understand wanting your resume to be a reflection of you. It should be, and it should convey you and your aesthetic. And the font that you choose can go a really long way in doing that. Don't underestimate it. So you want to keep it clean, but Times New Roman is not your only option. Serif and sans serif fonts are both completely acceptable.
Yeah, you can suit your font to kind of what your story is. So if you're like a STEM student, you might want to use Arial. I don't know why. It just feels like a very sciencey font, doesn't it? I don't really. It's a mystery why that is, but just I feel it in my soul. And then I feel like if you love literature, can't go wrong with some Times New Roman. So one thing I should also note, just funny student story, is you do not want to send your resume still as a Word file. There are a couple of problems with that. One of which is if you've ever tried to send Word documents to different people, you'll notice some strange things can happen with the formatting. Actually, I think at the end of this, we're going to send you our sample resume as a Word file. So you may experience this very problem. Like, why is the right justification not the same for me as it was for them? Help. So what we want to use instead is a PDF. It's called a portable document format for a reason. It's meant to be portable and the formatting won't change.
Yes. I think, yeah, you should get it in both formats. One so that you can tweak it and, if you want to use it as a base, but the other one so that you can see what it should look like. So I found these examples, these templates that we're looking at right now on the Yale Office of Career Strategy website. That's my go-to. Shout out to Yale, my alma mater. But they have, these are only 2. They have a bunch of really great resources. And drum roll. This is the suspense. This is our imaginary student's complete resume. And it looks great.
Yeah, so this will become a key element of your college application. And guess what? Once you have it for that, you can also use it with a little tweaking for anything you want to do in the future, from jobs to internships.
Yep, you are now on that ever-evolving journey toward your life as a professional. And I would definitely like to say the worst time to build a resume is right when you need one, when someone says, hey, send me your resume. You know, you want to always have it ready to go. So today is your call to action.
And with that, I think we're ready for some Q&A. I see some hands raising and everything, so I will stop sharing the screen. And here we are.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. I learned a lot. I'm going to go look at my resume now. Let's jump in. We got a couple questions from folks already. So I just want to put this to you guys. The first one that I'm looking at, somebody wrote about distinguishing the caliber of extracurricular activities appropriate for different schools. Sort of what is appropriate for the Ivy League, what is appropriate for top 25 schools. And I guess if you guys could speak to that and just this question of kind of what do we put in if we feel like we have to be clearing a certain hurdle or a certain kind of quality of activity?
So my initial thoughts, and I'm definitely curious to hear Sam's thoughts, with your experience as an admissions officer, but it is a delicate balance between, you want to tell the story of you. What are the things that you are truly, really passionate about? What are the ways that you've most enjoyed spending your time, and maybe the ways that you plan to continue spending your time in college, versus, what are those things we talked about, those big ticket items that look really good and vet you in a particular way. And I think Sam can speak more to this, but I think a lot of this kind of arises naturally. And I think admissions offices tend to put more weight on things, extracurricular activities that you have done longer. But I think that makes sense because if you've done something for 7 years or 4 years versus, maybe one freshman year and you dropped it, that you clearly, I would hope that it's because you enjoyed doing that activity, and that tells the story of who you are and what you care about. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I know we've totally discussed this for a while, but of course I was at Williams, which is, a liberal arts college, not an Ivy League. But our strong preference was for a genuine passion, a genuine commitment to whatever you were doing. So we looked for longevity and quality of the experience rather than something that you did for the look of it, just to kind of like tick a box. And I think that's going to be true of many schools. Now, of course, if you're applying to a very prestigious school, do you want to highlight prestigious things that you did? Absolutely, do that as well.
I want to add here that we're at the end of this, or hopefully at the end of this spectacular and unusual year. And I think somebody who did very little in the prestigious category, but was an incredible caregiver for their family, because that's what they were called upon to do, that is just as valid as an internship with a top 5 law firm or something like that. It really comes back to how you talk about it. And Sam and Eden, can you go back for a moment to that list of verbs? Because I think that's a big piece of what we're getting at. A lot of people last night asked about, what about this activity? What about this thing that I did? And our answer always comes back to, how do we describe that activity? How do we talk about it? How do we include it in our story?
Absolutely. And I think, a big part of your resume, it's like, how do you account for your time? What do you spend your time doing? And if during the pandemic, you spent your time in Central Park on your own, picking up trash, like that tells me something about you and your values. And I'm looking at this list here, and let's say you were a caretaker for a family member during this time. We could look at the helping skills. Maybe you attended to or assisted, or maybe you served as a mentor to a younger student. We could say you advised or counseled. Those are all skills. Those are real skills that translate to things in the real world. So truly, you can let your passion and your genuine interests guide you, because it's my understanding that that's what colleges want. They want people who are passionate and take initiative.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. And I think, oh,
There's a connected question here. One of our attendees wrote about getting accepted to a prestigious program that was just canceled. And this this attendee has made alternative plans, but is wondering about listing something like that. The fact that they were accepted, is that something that one should include, even if one did not actually get to go through with that program?
So,
mm,
and this kind of also goes back to a question we had about, how do I list that I've gotten into college and I haven't gotten my degree yet? You can say that something is expected. Like a degree is expected. So you can list that college. That's a common practice on resumes. And I think my first instinct, and again, I'm curious to hear what Sam says, is to say, why not? This is a very strange time. And if it's the kind of program that maybe you will plan to do in the future, like you might defer your acceptance to a future summer, or I don't know if it's a summer program or a year-long program, you could say expected in whatever year that is. But if not, I think there are other ways, perhaps in a cover letter or in an addendum to the application, to explain, like, that to note that you did get in, but it was canceled. So in lieu of that, you did X, Y, or Z activity.
I've got another question about inclusion. What are we putting in? Someone mentioned that they've seen students put ACT or SAT scores, or I guess one could put AP scores. I know you said GPA can be included. How do you feel about the inclusion of standardized test scores on a resume?
Sam, do you want to take
again, if it's going to help you, then you can put it. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I've been freezing up a little bit. Am I audible now? Is everything okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so just to address that, again, put the numbers in if they help you. Don't put them in if they don't. So if you're going to include an SAT and it's under like 20 or under, I'm still used to the old 2400. If it's under 1500, maybe not. I mean, because then why would you? And in addition, if it's going on your college application, there's no need because they're receiving the scores separately. So a college resume would not include scores.
But if it is for an employment opportunity, a really nice thing, this is like my favorite little insider tip, is that you can put relevant coursework under any, under an institute, like an educational institution, a school. So you could put it for high school or eventually when you get to college. And that's a really nice way when you're in college, especially, to name drop a little bit without name dropping. So, I took some classes in college with some really cool theater people, and I put relevant coursework, and then I had the professor's name. So that if someone's reading my resume and they have a connection to that person, they'll make that connection with me. So if this is for a job, and you could put like relevant coursework, AP Chem 5, if it helps you, why not?
Great. Another question here, sort of about this format, or where does the information go? In our Q&A, where someone asked about the format of the resume, about a theater format versus an academic format. Do you see there being really meaningful differences there, or is the kind of standard clean format that you guys are advocating, is that really where your money is?
If the question is specifically about theater resumes versus your general resume, those are completely different documents. So a theater resume, that's your theater resume. It'll have, the productions you were in, who directed it, what your role was. That is a completely separate document from your, resume, your professional resume, if you're applying for a job or for college. So yes, very, very different.
If a student had a significant role, a list of roles or performances that they participated in, would they include that as a separate resume in a college app? How would they bring that in a meaningful way?
I'll take this one just because I had this issue when I was, in high school. I was involved in theater, and I had my high school's acting company And I list as an item in the resume, in my professional resume, and the years I was involved. And I said, significant roles. And I listed some of my favorite roles. You don't have to list everything, but you can absolutely put your work in theater on your resume. It's just going to be different than your acting or your theater resume.
Thank you very much. I'm looking back. Somebody last night asked this question and you guys had a great answer. They wrote about how do you update your resume if you're on the college wait list, or if something's changed, what do you do? How do you change the resume?
Sam, do you want to take this one? I think Sam might be having some internet things.
Yeah.
So I can take this
Eden,
one.
why don't you go for it?
Sure. So first of all, yes, definitely have an updated resume.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I'm having too many connection issues right now. I don't really know what's going on. Can you hear me again?
Yes, we've got you back.
Okay. So the discussion was updating your resume after you've experienced being put on a wait list or something. And the answer is, if something significant has happened, you absolutely should, but you should also make sure to communicate that to the college by other means. So not just sliding the resume under the door, which they may or may not notice, but sending a proactive email, maybe with the help of somebody like Eden to teach you how to format emails in a professional manner.
Absolutely. One of my very best friends in the world, she was waitlisted at the school she ended up going to, and she, at our mock legislature program, Youth and Government, senior year of spring, she got a leadership position as a Supreme Court justice, and she let all the schools that she was waitlisted at know, because that was an important development. So absolutely, let them know.
Great. Somebody just wrote into our chat, how do you distinguish if you put something under leadership versus under the activity? And the example was, let's say you play violin and you're the lead soloist when you play violin. Do you put that under your leadership, or do you put that under your music activity, or how do you bridge that gap?
So that'll really depend on what the overall, what all of your
answer.
Go ahead, Sam. I'll go ahead. So that depends on what the overall, what all of your activities look like. If you have a lot of leadership roles that you want to highlight, I think it would make sense to have a leadership section. If you only have, if this is your one, I'd say put it in your music section, and it'll show, look, I'm really committed to my musical activities. So it depends. I think if it's just one thing, I don't know that you need to make an entire subsection for it.
Great. Thank you both. In our remaining time, and let's see if we can do this with your connectivity. We have a fun little thing here, which is some proofreading of the resume. And this is a key piece of what we look at when we review resumes. I'm speaking from my own position as somebody who reviews resumes of people applying to work here at Bespoke. We really do look very carefully. So Eden, can you talk us through this?
Absolutely. So here's some things you definitely want to look out for. Are the dates lined up? Is everything justified consistently to the right or to the left? Are the same things always italicized or bolded or underlined? Are your abbreviations consistent? Are your dashes the same length? Is your spacing uniform? These seem like small things, but if you're trying to convey a high attention to detail to a potential employer or a school, you want to prove, the proof is in the pudding. You want to prove that on your resume.
So let's take a look. And just full disclosure, I did not spot all of these errors on my first try through this document. So let's see if you all can beat me on this.
And you can put them in the chat if you see any errors. And while you're looking, one thing I will say allow yourself enough time to be able to have a draft of your resume, print it out, put it in a drawer, don't look at it for at least 3 days, and then proofread it. It's so much easier to spot things when you've given yourself some time away from it.
Oh, I see somebody has spotted a mistake. Founder versus intern italics. By the way, that would be, we were talking earlier about the violin example. That would be a good place to list, like as your title, what your leadership experience was with the violin.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're seeing, oh yeah, periods at the end of entries and not. And as these are rolling in, just know that it's totally acceptable to have periods at the end of your bullet points, and it's acceptable to not have them. The main thing is you just have to be consistent. So all of these things that we're talking about, italicized versus not, periods after the, state abbreviations versus not, there's no correct way. It just needs to be, or objectively correct way. It just needs to be consistent.
Exactly. Yep. Ooh, some underlining under commas, some not. That, I don't even think I circled those, but yes.
Yeah.
That's really good. Amazing. Okay, shall we do the big reveal?
Let's do it.
And again, I think I didn't even circle everything in red that that people are noticing.
Absolutely. So just to take you through these, so under the City College of New York, we have a semicolon separating New York with the coursework rather than a comma, which we see in the New York high school above. There's no right answer, you just have to be consistent. And then if we move on to the right, we'll see that's a short dash. But if we go down, we see that's a longer dash. Again, no right answer. Whatever you want for your dashes, just keep it consistent.
Yeah, somebody just pointed out, sorry, someone just pointed out the phone number is missing a digit, but I think that was just our typo. But that's a really good catch. Okay, sorry, Eden, keep going.
No, that's exactly, you want to, if someone's calling you for a job, you want to put your correct phone number down on your resume. Exactly. We'll see that intern, someone already pointed this out, intern is not italicized, whereas founder is. We can see that the summer 2019 on this line is not all the way right justified, and it should be because the other dates are. And also just generally, I think you should right justify them because it keeps it clean. And then we see consolidated is not capitalized, but the other starts to the bullet points are. Someone already pointed out the stray period. The abbreviation of February here, whereas August and May are, they're spelled out completely. So again, just be consistent. And someone already pointed out the N.Y. versus just New York throughout the rest. And that long ellipse, the spacing between the institution and the position and then the bullet points is much larger than it is throughout the rest of the resume. So you want to make sure that's consistent as well.
Great. Thank you both so much. That is the end, folks. I just want to say thank you to Sam and to Eden for this wonderful presentation. I learned even more today than I did yesterday, so thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. I just want to say one more word here. As Sarah has mentioned in the chat, we are readily available to speak with you. Those conversations are long, they are detailed, they are helpful, they are free. It is worth pointing that out. Our phone number and our email address is right there in the chat. Please do give us a call. Talk about what's on your mind. Talk about what you're thinking about, what you're worried about. We have a ton of experience doing this. Bespoke is born and raised in New York City. We're more than 15 years old. We've been doing this for so long and we love helping people. So please do call us and we can figure out what it is that you need, even if that's just somebody saying, you're doing great. Now go on out there and keep doing it. One could also set up work with Eden or with Sam or with any number of our other fantastic tutors. So please consider calling us to chat or for more. One more thing, we do have a webinar on college essays coming up. It's going to be in May, I believe. We've got to set that but please do plan on it. It's going to be great, and it's going to be very informative in the mode of this one today. So once again, it's Bespoke Education. Please spread the word. Please call us. We're really trying to get simple, helpful, fun information out there, especially in this moment, but really just because we care and we're trying to communicate that to you all. So thank you all so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend. Until soon. Bye.